This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Easter Sunday to you all. And, of course, happy birthday to the Royal Air Force, who are 100 years old today. They say that at the time, many people thought, why on earth would you found a new service on April Fool's Day? But hey, in the last 100 years, they've confounded any negative thoughts about them. And from 11 o'clock, I'm going to interview a very senior RAF historian. I'm going to interview a 97-year-old RAF veteran who was up there in the skies back in 1940. But for now, I'm sure many of you have been busy with Easter egg hunts this morning and all sorts of happy things. One person who I don't think is going to be feeling full of spring cheer today is the leader of Her Majesty's loyal opposition, Jeremy Corbyn, because it's all over the front pages. Sunday Times exposed Corbyn's hate factory, and that's about 20 websites who are not official Labour Party websites, but they support Corbyn and the party, and all sorts of horrible things are being said on those websites, and a lot of them relate to Jews and that religion. So the anti-Semitism row is not going away. In fact, in many ways, I think it seems to be growing, because there are so many cases that have been referred of members of the Labour Party. John Mann comments in the Mail on Sunday, and John Mann, who's been very much at the forefront of being deeply critical of Ken Livingstone and others that he sees himself as being anti-Semitic, and he says there are 74 cases of anti-Semitism within the Labour Party that are currently going through the party's disciplinary procedure, albeit very slowly, but he says it could be as many as 5,000 in his view. So John Mann feeling very strongly and basically saying, John Mann is saying that this problem is much deeper than even the front page of today's Sunday newspapers suggest. Now, what have we heard from Jeremy Corbyn? Well, he has given a Passover message.
It's easy to denounce anti-Semitism when you see it in other countries, in other political movements. It's sometimes harder to see it when it's closer to home. We in the Labour movement will never be complacent about anti-Semitism. We all need to do better. I'm committed to ensuring the Labour Party is a welcoming and secure place for Jewish people. And I hope this Passover will mark a move to stronger and closer relations between us and everybody in the Jewish community. In the fight against anti-Semitism, I'm your ally and always will be.
Well. It's easy to see anti-Semitism when it's elsewhere, but, and I quote, it's sometimes harder to see it when it's close to home. Does that convince you this Easter Sunday morning that Jeremy Corbyn fully understands the problem? Has he perhaps convinced himself that it's just the media having a go? He did say earlier in the week that there were pockets of anti-Semitism that existed within Labour. Not the odd isolated case, but pockets. And yet he doesn't appear to have been very decisive about this. Now, for me, I can speak on this subject, I think, with more clarity than anybody else alive in this country today. Why? Because I led UKIP for all those years, and as we started to rise in the polls and break through 10% and to start to win council seats and to start to do very well, the standard attack on UKIP was to find a council candidate, to find somebody who was a UKIP member who'd said something on Facebook or Twitter or elsewhere, and to put the whole lot together and to say, look, actually, this lot are really a bunch of freaks. They've got all sorts of really odd, weird views. They've got homophobes, racists, etc. And this went on month after month after month. In fact, it's not really true. It went on year after year. It never, ever stopped. Did it damage UKIP? Well, they never really got very close to the top of the party with this. They generally were isolated incidents. I mean, a Methodist preacher who lived in Henley, who was a town councillor, who happened to take a very Old Testament view of the world. But you know something? Cumulatively, bit by bit by bit, it was sapping. And I would think there were some fairly, people who perhaps had been thinking, should I vote UKIP? Should I desert my normal party and vote UKIP? And I guess they were put off from doing so. Didn't stop us forcing a referendum, didn't stop us winning the European elections, didn't stop us getting 4 million votes in the general election. But I do think we'd have got more than that had it not been for this non-stop campaign. And I did feel at times, how's this my fault? How is this my fault? How can I be responsible, for what somebody living out in the Shires has said on Facebook when they've come back from the pub? But what we did have was a very strict disciplinary procedure. People who were clearly in breach were out on their ear, PDQ. What we also had were criteria for joining the party, I think unlike any other in the country. There was a big declaration that, you'd never been a member of the BNP or any other organisation. I did my absolute best to stop people from joining who could be seen to be extremists. I don't think Corbyn has been as careful as that. Because think back to when it was £3 to join the Labour Party. £3 to join the Labour Party and everyone gets a vote. Whee, what fun. So they did. Hundreds of thousands of them, without, to my knowledge, any of them signing any declarations, without any checks being made as to who these people were. And so I suspect they've let in a lot of people with views that they now are going to continually keep coming back to bite them. But perhaps more damning is that their disciplinary procedure of those who are seen to have said very unpleasant anti-Semitic things, people get suspended for short periods, then get let back in. In one particular case, I'm rather amused. There's a woman who used to protest outside my meetings, carrying big boards saying how awful I was, and she's currently suspended for anti-Semitism. So, forgive me for perhaps enjoying that one. But I think what will happen now, and here's my prediction. My prediction is they found lots of people on these Labour supporting sites and Labour members that have said things that are deemed to be anti-Semitic. This will now move on. It will now move on to homophobia. It will now move on to, I've no doubt, misogyny. And we will start to see people who are Labour supporters, who've got strong religious beliefs, will start to be condemned for their views. And I think Corbyn is actually in a bit of trouble. Whether it's fatal, I can't say. I doubt it, because I think amongst the membership of the party, he's still seen as a bit of a hero. But what happens to those people out there? We call it Middle England, but it could be Middle South Wales, or it could be Mid-Scotland. What happens to those people that Labour needs to get to vote for them to win those marginal seats at the next election? Does a continual drip of unpleasantness and nastiness like this that has not been dealt with decisively by the party, does that perhaps have an impact on the polls and potentially an impact on the next general election? I think it does. So, I'm asking you, do you think Jeremy Corbyn can survive as leader given this onslaught? And if you think, well, actually, give him one more chance, and he may just be a little bit more decisive than he was with that Passover message, call 0345 6060 973, or perhaps you think, it's too late, it's gone. He had his chance to deal with it, he hasn't, it's time that he went. You can text to 84850, or maybe you're one of those who thinks he's actually been grossly unfairly attacked by the Daily Mail group, for example, in which case tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC, and of course watch us on Facebook, comment there too. James is calling from Dulwich. He's my first caller this morning. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Nigel.
So how much trouble is he in, James?
Well, unfortunately for Jeremy, he's got the media and the PLP who hate him going after him. They've already thrown the kitchen sink at him during the last general election, and now they're trying their last card, which is anti-Semitism. I mean, anti-Semitism is rife throughout society. And
is it?
Well,
do you think in modern-day Britain anti-Semitism is still rife throughout society?
Yes, it is. So is racism, unfortunately. It may be unlawful, but it's still there.
And what do you think the reason for that is, James?
Well, it's always been. It's always been.
Okay.
You're not going to change something that's always been.
Okay. And tell me, James, are you a Corbyn supporter?
I like his policies, but the Parliamentary Labour Party hate him.
Mm-hmm.
So he's actually fighting against two fronts. He's fighting against his own party and the media. You see, he's the only major British political leader that's actually criticised the Israeli government. Now, because he's got a whiff of actual power, he's actually deemed a threat now. So,
but James, if there are people, within the Labour Party membership and who are members of the party who've posted things saying that the Holocaust was a hoax, what do you think the Labour Party should do in that circumstance?
Well, they have procedures. The Labour Party is the biggest party in Europe.
Yes.
And I'm sure if you go to any big parties, you'll find the same thing. Nothing in the Labour Party is different from any other political party. Absolutely nothing.
Well, my argument, James, and I take your point, the bigger the party, the bigger the risk you're going to have of people saying things, off left or whatever it may be. But, James, my point is that the party's disciplinary procedure doesn't appear to be very robust in cases such as anti-Semitism, and that really, I think, is Corbyn's Achilles heel right at the moment.
Well, the BBC tried to smear him a few weeks ago with him standing outside the Kremlin with the hat, and you can see all these things, and when they interview people, they sort of give anti-Corbyn people more airtime than supporters. I mean, there was a Jewish woman that was being interviewed. She actually supported Jeremy Corbyn, and she was just cut off every single time.
All right, so they're being a bit unfair. James, I thank you. John on Facebook says the more this goes on, the more obvious it is that it's a smear campaign. Well, I tell you what, as leader of UKIP, I knew all about those too. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show exclusively on LBC. It's now 10:15. The anti-Semitism row with Jeremy Corbyn ploughs on and on and on. And yes, of course, the Tory supporting press are having a field day with this. I understand that fully. I just personally think their party's disciplinary procedures don't appear to be particularly robust. Let's give you an example. Tom Watson, deputy leader, kicked up a big stink about a Labour member who was accused of Holocaust denial, and his suspension was opposed by Christine Shawcroft, a member of Labour's NEC. So a battle between a member of the NEC and the deputy leader, again, for me from UKIP, it's all familiar territory in many ways. And overnight, Christine Shawcroft has resigned and been replaced by Eddie Izzard, who never ever gets elected onto Labour's NEC, but now because she's fallen off, he's jumped up the ladder. But there is more collateral damage. Sir David Garrard, a major donor to the party, and bear in mind this party gets most of its money from the trade unions, but David Garrard, who's given roughly £1.5 million over the last few years to Labour, David Garrard says, as one of the former leading political and financial supporters of the party, of which I was a member for many decades, I no longer feel any affinity with or connection to what it has now become. So there is some collateral damage out there. And my prediction is there's more to come. We will see stuff on these sites that will be said to be homophobic, will be said to be misogynistic. I think there's more to come. Now, on Twitter, Janice says to me, no, Corbyn is not in trouble. Every football ground, even the boxing last night, were singing, oh, Jeremy Corbyn. Well, I have to say, after that Joshua fight last night, I couldn't quite make out what the noise was. Can somebody please, who was there, tell me, were they singing, oh, Jeremy Corbyn, after the Joshua win last night, or not? With everything he has done during his leadership, and now this too, Corbyn's political career is dead, says Chris. Well, don't speak too soon. The Labour members who are now denying anti-Semitism in their ranks are the same people who said, of course, not all Leave voters are racist, but you can be sure racists voted to leave. Well, the boot's on the other foot now, says Tony. Tony, I had these people standing outside my public meetings with placards. If ever I got, within close distance of them, they would try to throw things at me or bash me over the head. And they are now the ones in some trouble. That's the only bit about this that pleases me. Joshua is my next caller from Kensington and a first-time caller to this show. Good morning, Joshua.
Good morning, Nigel. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter to you. And I was suggesting earlier that it may not be that happier Easter Sunday morning for Jeremy Corbyn.
Well, unfortunately, I think Jeremy Corbyn is going to survive. And
so do I.
And I have to say one thing. Jeremy Corbyn speaks with forked tongue. He says one thing and actually means another. What he's saying is that I'm against it, I haven't done anything, this is not my fault, I haven't said anything like this at all, I haven't seen these things. And then all of a sudden you see people coming out supporting him with those views, and he's doing nothing about it.
Joshua, is it possible, Joshua, that you're being influenced by the right-wing press?
No. You know why?
Go on.
I'm a Labour supporter.
Okay, right, fine. Okay.
Yeah, listen, my dad was the most socialist person you've ever met in your life.
Right.
Okay? Right, okay. I understand. I want the NHS to survive. I want it to develop. I want it to be something. I want a multicultural Britain, and I love it for it. You know what I mean? But besides that, he's attracted people that want a really far left-wing Soviet kind of type of view, which is anti-Western. Not just anti-Jewish, but anti-Western, anti-American.
Yep.
Okay? And you know one thing you said really right, correctly, earlier, and you think it's going to now move on to the other thing. Let me start it off. Hamas, the people that he supports, calls him his friends, are so anti-homophobic.
Well, I've made this prediction already, Joshua, haven't I? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you go now. He shared a platform with homophobes. Forget about anti-Israel. He shared a platform with homophobes, and he's been campaigning for gay rights and this, that, and the other. And he threw them out the window as soon as he went there.
Yes.
He didn't go, and which country in the Middle East has actually supported people like that? What I don't understand about this, these guys, they're virulently anti-Israel that they throw every other single, what's the word I'm looking for? Every single thing that they hold dear out the window because it's anti-Israel. And then they come on.
So in the end, Joshua, he can't get away with this, can he? He can't pretend to be for multiculturalism, for gay rights, for a multicultural Britain, for tolerance, whilst at the same time having friends like Hamas, Hezbollah, and goodness knows who else.
Exactly. Who throw people off the buildings, who have no legislation to protect gays or homosexual or any type of minority gender, any of that transgender thing, you go to the and find out, that kind of thing. And you see where it is. Now, the thing is, they throw that out the window because they're anti-Western, anti-Israel, anything to do with capitalism or anything like that. I'm a Labour supporter.
Joshua, I'm so pleased that you've said all these things on this phone call, because I was tempted to say them all earlier. I just hinted at them. If I'd said them, I'd be condemned for making racist comments and being vile. But you've said them, Joshua, and you've hit the nail on the head. Like you, I don't think that he is going to be removed as leader over all of this, because his own support base within the membership is too strong. But do you think, Joshua, as a Labour supporter that wants a Labour government, do you think this is all enough to deny him victory at the next election?
I personally don't think I've actually said anything racist. Or anything.
No, nor do I. But that's not. But no. But if I say it, Joshua, it would be deemed racist because you make comment about some extremists within the religion of Islam who throw homosexuals off buildings. Even making that comment leaves you open to the accusation.
Well, Hamas is an organisation. I didn't say Islam or anything like that at all.
No.
What I did say is that when you go to see the worldview that these people have got, they think that the West is the problem. The issue, and as Israel is ally to the West, and when you see these things, they'll blind themselves from any other topic that may be important to them, or they say that it's important to them. They blind themselves completely, and that's the problem. Now, this anti-Semitism that's come up, I agree, has been around for years, but it's been polarized in the Labour Party, and it's drawn people to him. Now, there's a heck of a lot. I'm not saying everyone is, but there's a heck of a lot going on there. We see a lot of this on the Facebook profiles. And if we don't do something about it, it's going to turn into a little bit of France. You know when that lady, that 85-year-old woman, died? in recently.
Yep.
Yeah.
Holocaust survivor murdered. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, exactly.
In what was clearly, in what seemed to be, what the French police said was a racist crime. Joshua, thank you for your call, your points and your passion. Answer coming back, just because a few idiots at Glastonbury chanted, "Oh, Jeremy Corbyn," the actual tune has been used at boxing way before Corbynism. Thank you. I think that maybe explains my slight incomprehension at hearing that this morning. John is calling from Hendon. John, hello.
Good morning. Basically, I don't know where to start. This is just I've been in this country for 56 years.
Yeah.
I'm from Israel, and this racism has been there from day one, ever since I come. This whole thing has been taken out of proportions by the right-wing media, and they're doing a very good job of it at the moment. And basically, Jeremy Corbyn, although I'm not a big fan of his, but for the first time I will vote for him. I'm fed up with Theresa May, with all the lies and all the other stuff they've done, all the promises with Brexit. The small example I'll give you, he sacked somebody last week because they said something against Brexit. And what has Theresa May done so far all this time? Nothing. So I go back to everybody else that's ringing in. Yeah, read this small print. This is all the media. All they're trying to do, there's the election coming up. You've experienced some of this yourself.
I know, John. Absolutely. I know exactly how it works. John, let me ask you a slightly broader question. You know, living in North London, have you noticed over the last 2 decades that anti-Semitism is now a bigger problem in North London than it was?
It's not a North London issue. It's all over the Europe.
Well, yeah, it's certainly there in Brussels. I've seen it with my own eyes. It's certainly there in Paris because thousands are leaving. Of Jewish people are leaving every year.
Where were these guys before? What's happened all of a sudden? Nothing has happened. They're just making things worse because of the election coming up. And for the first time, I'll be voting for him and Labour.
All right.
In my life, I've been a Conservative supporter.
John, why is that? John, let me ask you again. Why is anti-Semitism on the rise in North London, in Brussels and in Paris?
I can't answer that, but at the end of the day, it's definitely an increase without doubt. But like I said, I've been in this country for 56 years, and I've experienced many cases in the past. Nothing is different at this time.
No, John is convinced that it is a big, thank you for your call, it's a big media smear. He's going to vote for Corbyn anyway. More on Brexit, I think, than anything else. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It is now 10:30. Well, Jeremy Corbyn has got problems. The front pages of the newspapers, the Tory supporting ones, I say that because it's true, they don't like him very much, but the accusations keep on coming. I think there are more that will come. I'm asking you whether he can survive as leader. I think he will survive, but I think he'd be damaged by it. Before I get back to that, the Electoral Commission was set up back in 2001 by Tony Blair to clean up British politics. And it seems to me all they've really presided over in the course of those years is the House of Lords being stuffed full of party donors, a massive growth in postal voting with the associated fraud and intimidation that goes with that, a damn near successful attempt to close UKIP down in 2010, and other than that, they've achieved absolutely nothing. But are they impartial? Because surely if they're judging, they're looking back at the Brexit referendum and seeing accusations being made by people who work within Vote Leave. They've been investigating Leave.eu for nearly 400 days now, so I'm told. But just look at some of the people that are on them. Take Lord Horam. Now, I mean, here's a proper Blairite career politician. Started off as a Labour MP, then became an SDP MP, then became a Conservative MP, then went to the House of Lords and now sits on the panel of the Electoral Commission. Told the House of Lords recently he could see the logic in a second referendum. Well, how on earth can he adjudge these cases if his own prejudicial view is still out there being put today? Or let's try Sir John Holmes, who's going to be the next chairman of Elcom, who spoke about the panoply of Eurosceptic nonsense articulated during the campaign. Bit tough to see how he can be an impartial chairman, given he's saying this now on the record. Or we could try Bridget Prentice, saying that Tony Blair was spot on when he declared that Brexit was not inevitable. Or we can move on to a former Lib Dem MP, David Howarth, who said that the young should not be bound by the referendum, claiming that Leave voters were older and dying, and that actually many of them were full of racist violence and an emotional response. I mean, the whole thing is just extraordinary. It clearly, LCOM has been a failure. Clearly, British politics is more corrupt than it was when it was set up back in 2001. And, you know, when people sit as judges in courts or whatever it may be, they're supposed to leave behind their personal opinions and certainly not to opine in public. I would have thought all of those people should just be kicked off the Electoral Commission, and we should try again. Because how on earth can people like that judge what either side have done right or wrong when they look back at the referendum campaign of 2016? And I really think it's almost become as if career politicians, ex-MPs, fill up all of these jobs. And I'm not sure that that is the right way round. Back to Corbyn. Will he survive? Diane on Facebook says, yes, he will survive. But the Labour Party needs to strengthen its disciplinary policy and enact it. Well, you can say that again. None of the parties screen their membership. I did try. And the Italian five-star movement, by the way, do screen their membership. And once those members have been screened and join that online forum, they can then vote for party policy, for new leaders, for candidates. That's how they do it. Most members adhere to the rules of behaviour. It is a very small amount that have to go down the disciplinary route. Diane, that may well be true, but as I know from my own experience, the fact that it's a small amount, or to quote Jeremy, pockets of anti-Semitism doesn't make it any better. Peter says, on the subject of anti-Semitism, I can't believe that people are still fighting over religion. It's the 21st century. Peter, just have a look around the world. Not much really has changed, to be frank. Dave says, Corbyn will be our next PM. Get used to it, Farage. Well, fine, Dave. I mean, do ring up and tell me why. Dave, do ring up on 0345 6060 973 and tell me why none of this will affect Jeremy Corbyn's chances, because I think in those marginal seats that he needs to win, it may well make a difference. Sheila says the Labour Party has been hijacked by some extremists. And back to the boxing last night. And Ian Brown's helping me out here. He says, at the boxing, they were singing, "Oh, Anthony Joshua." And no football ground sings about Corbyn ever. Right? OK, thank you very much indeed. Please, people who know about that, please let me know. I'm going to go to Alex, who lives in Mill Hill. Good morning, Alex. Is Corbyn in trouble?
Well, I don't think he's in trouble, but I think that the media would like to give that impression to the public. And we have to assume that our public get its news from much broader sources now. So I'm not convinced. I mean, this is a really good topic for you, though, Nigel, because you faced a lot of this yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Loads of it.
And,
years of it.
You know, you've spoken a lot of truth about it. And I think the problem Corbyn has got is when you're popular, and he is popular, particularly online, or supported by normal people. I mean, I've met some of them.
Yeah.
I do some writing as an investigative journalist. And what I think's going on is that you've got different groups that are noticing that Corbyn's doing very well in the polls. I think it was about 2 weeks ago, there was a poll, wasn't there, that he was way ahead of the Conservatives, and Theresa May has been trying to struggle to catch up.
I mean, Alex, do you know what? Whatever the polls say today doesn't really matter. The fact is that he has performed since that election was called almost exactly a year ago now. You know, he's had a dramatic surge in his own personal popularity. And as you say, the more popular you are, the higher your head is above the political parapet, the more it's going to get shot at. And I understand that, Alex. I really, really do.
You know what, Nigel? At the root of this is your issue, Brexit, because what people, if you didn't notice, it was the anniversary with a year to go until we come out.
I did notice, yes.
And I think for people like Chuka Umunna and some of these other Labour usual suspects, that's the signal for them. And I work in the Jewish community in North London, and that's the signal for them to say, right, let's see if we can use this issue, let's milk this issue as much as we can.
Are you suggesting, Alex, are you suggesting that, and I won't mention any names, it wouldn't be fair, but are you suggesting that the really strong pro-Remain, we want a second referendum types that are part of the Parliamentary Labour Party are happy for these stories about Corbyn and anti-Semitism to be published or perhaps even leaked out every day?
Absolutely, and I mean, one of the things I've done online, Nigel, is that a lot of the time people have sent me threads claiming that there's anti-Semitism. When we examine it as part of the investigation group, what we find is these are spoof accounts that have been set up by people who are not. They've got pictures of Jeremy Corbyn on their posts, but they're not actually Jeremy Corbyn supporters, and they post all sorts of nonsense. And a lot of people who are in that movement on the left, they need to be very careful of these groups, because there's a lot of them about there.
Oh, Alex, look, I understand that fully. I understand that fully, but when it is members, clearly members or candidates or councillors of the Labour Party that say extreme and anti-Semitic things, then it's different, Alex, isn't it? And I would put it to...
those people wouldn't last a minute, Nigel, in any party.
But here's the point, Alex.
They'll be gone.
But here's the point, Alex. Actually, they seem to be surviving within the Labour Party. Lengthy disciplinary procedures, brief suspensions, and then they're back.
No, because the problem you've got, Nigel, just because people are talking about anti-Semitism doesn't mean anti-Semitism exists. Talk is cheap. Facts and reality and evidence are totally different. There's something called due process of law, and that means that people have to be investigated if allegations are made against them. What some of these people would like is that people to just say things and people to be automatically sacked. And if that were to be the case, they'd turn around to Corbyn. They'd say to him that you can't do that. You're not giving people a chance. You're sacking people without...
Is it your view, Alex? Is it your view, as somebody that studies this very closely, is it your view that this is one of those crises that will just blow over and in 6 months we'll have forgotten about it?
Well, the more the chance that the British public want to vote Jeremy Corbyn as their Prime Minister, the more the groups that are the more the groups that want to undermine him will come up with stories from 15 years ago.
Alex, do you know what? Do you know what? And particularly as today is the 100th anniversary of the RAF, I will draw that parallel of Corbyn and me that you mentioned. So it was in 2013.
Yes.
And we had just had a 30% score in the Eastleigh by-election. We were about to beat the Labour Party nationally in the English county elections, and it was off to the races. And I started to get abuse on an industrial scale. I mean, it really was a bit...
I remember it.
Oh, yeah. And I got a letter, Alex. I got a letter in very, very spidery handwriting. And the bloke said, "Dear Mr. Farage, you don't know me. I'm 93 years old. During the war, I served in Bomber Command. And let me tell you something. You only start taking flak when you're getting near the target. Keep going, yours sincerely." And I reckon that brings this discussion between you and I and the 100th anniversary of the RAF together quite nicely. Alex from Mill Hill, I thank you. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive at LBC. It is now 10:45. Well, I'm asking you, will Corbyn survive these constant attacks in the newspapers, albeit mostly Conservative supporting ones, over allegations of anti-Semitism within the Labour Party and in many Facebook groups that publicly say they support Corbyn and the Labour Party? Now, I think he will survive it. One person who doesn't is Peter Oborne, who wrote in yesterday's Daily Mail, "I'll make a prediction. Under fire, Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn will soon be gone. He said, this week with a heavy heart, I changed my mind." And that's because Peter Oborne has been saying he thinks Jeremy Corbyn's a very decent bloke, and he said so repeatedly. He said, "I'm now convinced that there is something detestable about Corbyn's politics, which makes it impossible to defend him any more." And because he's changed his mind about how decent he thought Corbyn was, he thinks others will too. I don't know. I'm being absolutely inundated by messages. His supporters will readily turn a blind eye, says Jane. He is a disgrace and should resign. If he stays, then the boundaries of hate are pushed to more acceptable levels. The man has shown the dignity to survive anything thrown at him. He's got my support, says Ian. He will survive, and with no problem. I get on Twitter. My theory is Corbyn's only there because of a lack of a proper candidate for Labour leader. As soon as one is found, Corb will be out of the spotlight, says Louise. Well, I'm not so sure about that, but Corbyn should stay as leader. It is outrageous that Jeremy Corbyn has been blamed for other people's social media posts. Well, as I said earlier, I know all about that. If anyone has evidence of anti-Semitism, they should report it to the police. It is not possible for Corbyn to police the internet. If the law has been broken, the police should... Well, Sarah, that's fine, but the truth of it is, Yeah, you can't police the internet, and you can't stop people online saying they love you or hate you, and you can't do much about that. But what you can do, Sarah, is you can, be in charge of your own party, and that, I think, is where the failing is. Manjeet is calling from Peterborough. Good morning, Manjeet.
It's Manjeet. Nigel, good morning. And before I start, first of all, a very peaceful, happy Easter to everyone, and to you, and to everybody listening, regardless who they vote for and what their political
Absolutely, thank you. I agree with that totally.
Right, first of all, okay, Nigel. I don't believe Jeremy Corbyn is anti-Semitic. However, I think he's taken his eye off the ball and he's turned a blind eye completely to what's been going on. I can only talk about my own town here in Peterborough. And I think one of the problems is now, and this is going on up and down the country in large cities, we've got certain groups who've taken over big areas of the Labour Party in London, Manchester, Birmingham, the North East, wherever have you. And they're not Asians, I'm not going to mince my words, they're mostly Kashmiri or Pakistani origins who've taken over large parts of the Labour Party with an agenda, and unfortunately they found an ally with the left wing as well. And the two things they hate are the Americans and the Israelis and capitalism. They're the three things they really detest.
That does rather bring them all together, doesn't it? Yeah,
it does bring them all together, and they can be quite intimidating if you try and through personal experience, if you speak out, you are gagged, you are intimidated. And the Labour Party really and truthfully doesn't want to see itself as a racist party, so it's turned a blind eye totally. And I think that's what Jeremy Corbyn's done, along with a lot of the hierarchy, unfortunately. And now it's come back to bite him.
Majid, do you see this as being about religion or about nationality?
It's probably both. It's a question. I mean, obviously, if you have anything positive to say about Israel, you are automatically condemned, sort of thing. They can't get past the history, they can't get past what's going on. Okay, Israel is not the greatest country in the world, they've got a lot of wrongs as well, but, it needs compromise, and the thing is, these are so entrenched hatreds that go back for years and years and years, and they just can't move away from them. And it doesn't help when Jeremy Corbyn goes onto stage with a PLO scarf on or on stage with Hamas, because all it has done is reinforced...
I think doesn't help is a slight understatement, isn't it?
Well, precisely, it just doesn't help. And in fact, it legitimises that, and that's what he's done. And now, it was okay when he wasn't in power, he's a backbencher, he'd get away with it, but now all of a sudden he's a leader of the party, and all those things now are coming back to haunt him. And he's really now got to decide where he stands. Either he's going to totally expel these people and make a clean slate of it, or he just does a U-turn and says, OK, get on and do what you want.
Now, you're in a very marginal seat, aren't you? You're in it was a Conservative-held seat, Stuart Jackson, but Labour managed to take it. So, yeah, it is in seats like this where actually people will make their decisions based on, do they think this is a horrible smear, or is there a real problem? Listen, I thank you for your call. I better move on to Peter, who's calling from Northwood. Peter, good morning.
Good morning to you, Nigel. I think the caller before last seemed to think that this anti-Semitism is invented, which I find absolutely staggering, because the evidence is now so great. I mean, the Facebook sites, which I understand have 400,000 followers, are full of classic anti-Semitic tropes. I mean, Corbyn himself, people keep saying, Jeremy Corbyn hasn't got an anti-Semitic bone in his body, but if you walk like a duck and you talk like a duck and you mix with ducks, at some stage someone's going to call you a duck. And the fact is he mixes with, he calls Hamas and Hezbollah his friends. And I think the left wing have taken over the Labour Party, which is extremely sad, because of course Jews generally were the biggest supporters of the Labour Party going back to the beginning of the 20th century when it started coming to the UK. Yeah, I mean
that is some time ago, Peter, and even before the RAF was founded, Peter. So it is a long time ago.
I think where the problem is, Nigel, is the way that university campuses have been hijacked both by the left wing and particularly the very anti-Israel sentiment, which is getting worse. And, of course, it's compounded on Facebook. And, of course, there is a link between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. Anti-Zionism is anti-Semitic. You can be anti-Israel or against
yes, of course, and that,
which is fine.
Yeah,
Anti-Zionism is actually anti-Semitic per se.
Peter, I'm with you. I think we're in denial over the growth of anti-Semitism.
That's a big problem.
We're in denial, and it's happening in Paris, it's happening in Brussels, it's happening in the United Kingdom, and we're in denial. Peter, I thank you. I've got time for one last caller on this. Dominic, who's a first-time caller to this show, and he's calling from Banbury in Oxfordshire. Good morning, Dominic.
Hello, good morning, Nigel. I was just going to make a few points. I'm an ex-Labour member myself. I gladly cancelled my membership a few months ago.
Because?
And, sorry?
Because?
Oh, well, a whole list of reasons. I didn't list anti-Semitism at the time, but I just... Well, but the basic reason is because of Jeremy Corbyn. Personally, I just can't stand the guy. So...
OK, but a lot of people do like him, Dominic.
The point, the important point there is, do a lot of voters like him? Obviously, a majority of the membership of the Labour Party, they adore him. They think he's some sort of secular Jesus. But a majority of voters like him. So, Jeremy Corbyn's even got the same initials as Jesus Christ. I mean, I'm sure, obviously that's a coincidence.
Dominic, it's Easter. This could be blasphemy. But anyway, go on.
Sorry. But the question you ask is, will he survive? I think he will survive. And that is, to me, that is evidence of why the Labour Party is done as a party of government. And, that's also, I think, good evidence for why the Labour Party, it will split. Because moderates like me, our patience isn't inexhaustible. Mine ran out in January. At some point, the moderates in the party, the moderate MPs and members, they would just decide, we've had enough. We cannot put up with this anymore. Every time there's a leadership election, some hard left MP is going to get elected.
Yeah, it's difficult.
So at some point...
Well... That's what Mr. Blair and others are thinking about, a new SDP-type party in Dominic. If Labour is seen to be completely hijacked by the hard left and they are anti-capitalist, anti-Western, anti-American and anti-Jewish, then that split will happen. Dominic, I thank you very much indeed for your call. I thank all of you for your calls. Believe me, this story is going to run and run. There'll be a whole load more. Next, it'll be homophobia. Then it'll be misogyny. Will it make a difference? Well, a lot of you are going to stick with Corbyn regardless. Now, next, the Royal Air Force turns 100 today and will celebrate the centenary with a church service in London. Senior figures and veterans from the RAF will attend the Founders' Day service at the Church of St Clement Danes on the Strand in London. The Queen has sent a message of congratulations, and a 100-day baton relay will be started on the steps of the Royal Courts of Justice. I want to know from you, what has the RAF meant to you and your family? Call me on 0345 6060973, text to 84850, tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. Watch us on Facebook, comment there too. It all starts next.